I never imagined that my life, which I thought was ordinary and safe, could shatter in a single afternoon. The air was thick with the usual hum of quiet suburban life, the soft chirping of birds outside, the distant laughter of children from the street, and the faint ticking of the old clock in our hallway. Everything seemed normal, almost too normal, and that's when I first felt it. The subtle, almost invisible tremor in my chest, a warning I didn't understand yet. It started with a noise, a faint creak, the sound of a door slightly ajar. My curiosity, tinged with unease, pulled me toward the storage room at the end of the hallway. I had walked past that room hundreds of times. It was small, unassuming, a place we kept the extra boxes, some old furniture and forgotten memories. But today something felt different. I approached silently, each step slower than the last. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the doorknob. The door was unlocked, and then I heard it. A hushed, hurried conversation, the unmistakable sound of my husband's voice, and another, softer, feminine, familiar. Time froze. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so violently, I thought the walls themselves might collapse under its rhythm. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. It was worse than anything I could have imagined. The voice of my neighbor, her words laced with urgency and fear, mingled with laughter, flirtation, a tone I never expected her to use with my husband. I felt my stomach drop. My hands shook. My knees threatened to give way. How long had this been going on? How blind had I been? I wanted to scream, to run away, but my feet were rooted to the floor. I wanted evidence. I needed certainty. I stepped back, my mind racing, and suddenly a dark, daring thought struck me. If they were to be confronted, I had to have control. I had to see everything through my own eyes, hear every word myself. I slowly turned the doorknob, the metal cold against my palm. And then I pushed the door open. There they were. My husband, the man I had promised my life to, pressed close to the woman who had lived next door for years, someone I trusted. I had caught them in the act, though not fully intimate yet, the tension in the room thick and raw. Their eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, faces frozen in panic. I felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disbelief crash over me like a tidal wave. Words failed me. My body acted before my mind could catch up. I grabbed the heavy broom I had been leaning against the wall earlier, and without thinking, I pushed the door shut behind me and turned the key in the lock. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the tiny space. They were trapped. For a moment, silence fell, but not the quiet of peace. It was the silence of terror, the breathless moment before a storm breaks. I could see it in their faces, fear, shame, panic, and I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt power, raw, unrelenting, dangerous power. I walked to the phone, each step deliberate, slow. The calmness I felt was strange, almost surreal. I dialed her husband's number with trembling fingers. As the line rang, I held the phone tightly, my knuckles white. Each ring stretched endlessly, and then, finally, he answered. "Hello?" His voice sounded ordinary, unsuspecting. "I think you need to come home immediately," I said, my voice steady, almost cold. "Your wife, she's with my husband, in the storage room." I heard a pause. Confusion, disbelief. Then the click of shoes on the floor, the sound of someone rushing. He hung up abruptly. I turned back to the storage room. Their faces were pale, and their eyes darted around, realizing fully that there was no escape. They couldn't deny it. Every lie, every secret, every whispered conversation they had ever shared was now exposed in the harshest way possible. Time moved strangely in that moment. Each second stretched into eternity. I watched them struggle silently, the weight of their guilt pressing down like a heavy fog. And I realized something frightening. I was no longer the shocked, helpless wife. No, something had changed. A cold, calculated fire had ignited in me. I began to think through the next steps, the perfect plan. This wasn't just about catching them. This was about exposing them, making them face every consequence of their betrayal. I could let anger dictate my actions and destroy everything in a moment of madness. Or I could play this carefully, like a masterful strategist, turning their panic into my advantage. I chose the latter. As I moved away from the storage room, I began documenting everything. The muffled voices, the frantic whispers, the slight movements as they tried to compose themselves, every detail would be remembered, recorded in my mind. I could already imagine the scene I would paint later, the confession of their guilt and my composure in contrast. The image of me standing strong while they crumbled, it gave me a dark thrill I hadn't felt in years. The sound of her husband's car arriving outside made my heart skip. I looked out the window and saw him sprinting up the path, face a mix of confusion and dread. And then, from the storage room, I heard the first sound of desperation, a pounding on the door, voices begging, pleading. I smiled faintly. The storm had arrived, and I was the calm center around which it would rage. I opened the door just slightly, enough to let them see me. Their eyes widened further, if that was even possible. "This is it," I said softly, almost whispering. "There's no running, no lies. No excuses, you've been caught." And just like that, the air in the room shifted. Fear, shame, and panic mingled with the thick tension of betrayal. The neighbor opened her mouth, but no words came. My husband's face contorted in a mix of guilt and disbelief. I felt a strange satisfaction watching them squirm, realizing fully for the first time what they had done to me, how their selfish desires had destroyed the foundation of trust I had built over years. And in that moment, I made a silent vow. They would pay. Every lie, every stolen moment, every act of betrayal, there would be justice. I stepped back, giving them space, my mind already planning the next move. The scene was set, the players were in place, and soon, very soon, the world outside would know exactly what had been happening behind closed doors. For now, though, I watched them panic. I let the fear settle over them like a shadow. I let them feel the weight of every hidden secret, every whispered conversation, every stolen glance. And I realized something terrifying, yet exhilarating. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was the architect of their reckoning. The yard was a blur of motion. Footsteps, a slammed car door, the rustle of leaves. He arrived like a man who still believed in normalcy, in explanations that could be smoothed over with apologies and time. When he reached the doorstep, he was halfway between confusion and fury. The kind of look a man has when the world rearranges itself under his feet and he doesn't yet know which pieces are missing. He didn't run up the path, he barged in. He cut himself off when he saw the storage room door, the way it was latched, and then me, standing too calm, too collected. The breath left him in a ragged sound. "What is this?" he demanded, voice brittle. "What are you doing here?" My answer was soft, precise. "You need to see what's inside." He moved forward like a man stepping into a trap he might have set for someone else. For a second, I thought he might try to force the door. He didn't. Maybe he still believed in polite conversation. Maybe he thought a reasonable man could reason with reason. He opened the door. The expression on his face when he saw them. My husband slumped against the boxes, the neighbor with mascara streaking down her face, was the look of a man who had been given the punchline to a joke he didn't know he was in. Shock, then rage, then something else. A raw, animal hurt that made his jaw clench so hard I could see the tendon at his temple twitch. He began. The word was a bomb that exploded straight through the room. The neighbor started to explain, voice high, pleading. "It's not what, please, he opened the door. The expression on his face when he saw them. My husband slumped against the boxes, the neighbor with mascara streaking down her face, was the look of a man who had been given the punchline to a joke he didn't know he was in. Shock, then rage, then something else. A raw, animal hurt that made his jaw clench so hard I could see the tendon at his temple twitch. He began. The word was a bomb that exploded straight through the room. The neighbor started to explain, voice high, pleading. "It's not what, please, I watched them. Up close, the neighbor's husband was different than the man I had thought he was. Not in kindness or cruelty, but in the way betrayal reconfigures a person. He was tall, yes, but smaller somehow, reduced to the raw edges of his anger. He took a step toward my husband, hand raised like a judge delivering a sentence. I felt it then, the world teetering at a new angle. I could have let him tear them apart with his hands. I could have joined in the fury and let the house become an arena of violence and regret. That would have been easy. But easy had never been what I wanted. I wanted permanent. I wanted them dismantled in a way that would leave them exposed for years to come, not just bruised for an afternoon. I held up my hand. Stop. Silence snapped back like a rubber band. Every head turned to me. The neighbor's husband stared as if the sound came from a stranger. You want answers? I asked, my voice low. Then sit, hear the truth. Because right now you have suspicion, and suspicion will burn you faster than the truth ever could. He didn't sit, he paced, fists clenched. But curiosity is a slow poison. It calmed him a fraction. I told them everything I had seen, the door unlocked, the whispered laughter, the way they had looked at each other. I described the tiny things that only someone present could know. The way my husband had tucked his shirt into his belt nervously, the neighbor's quick, guilty glances toward the window. I did not yell. My voice was the blade, and it cut much deeper because it did not tremble. When I finished, the neighbor's husband sat down like he had been struck. He looked at his wife as if trying to find the place where the person he'd married had been replaced by an actor playing a role he no longer recognized. You were hiding it? He whispered. You lied to me. Her face collapsed. Tears came, not the theatrical kind, but the small, relentless kind that seep from the corners of the soul. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. It happened. It didn't mean, he snapped. So small then, so meaningless. The way he repeated that word, meaningless, sent something cold through my veins, as if meaning could be measured by intention alone. I realized then that I had been measuring this with more than anger. I had been calculating leverage. You're not the only one with a voice here, I said quietly. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the little recorder I always kept for mundane things. Grocery lists, receipts, reminders. I had not planned to use it when I left the house this morning. Habit had made it a part of me. Habit had made it my secret weapon. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room, tinny and immediate. My husband's laugh, a sound I had heard 1,000 times in better contexts, echoed with a new undertone, thin, eager. The neighbor's teasing reply, the soft gasp as he stepped closer. Each clip cut like evidence stamped in wax. They looked up at me in stunned horror. The neighbor's husband stared at the speaker like it had grown fangs. You recorded this? He asked incredulously. I recorded what I heard, I said. I recorded it because I knew I would never trust my memory against two practiced liars. He put his head in his hands. The neighbor crawled toward him, hands reaching out helplessly. Please, she begged. Don't. They will see everything, I said, and the words were the click of a lock. I have copies, I can send them. To family, to work, to friends, to her husband's office, to his boss, to the social group that organizes the neighborhood committee. I can make private look public. There was a hitch in his breath, a choking animal sound. I didn't relish ruining anyone's life, but I did relish leveling the field, making them taste the exposure they'd handed me. The neighbor's husband looked up slowly, the fight draining out of him, replaced by something colder. You think that will fix it? He asked. No, I said, but it will make them feel the weight of what they've done. It will make them stand in the light. My husband started to speak, to promise, to apologize in that slurry, ineffective way. I cut him off. Promises are for people who plan to keep them, I told him. I want truth. I want details. I want their names, their excuses, the times. You will tell me everything. He swallowed and began to list. Nights away, texts erased, quick meetings at the grocery store. Each admission was a nail. With every word, the neighbor's husband's face changed. The man who had barged in with raw fury now sat numbly as a clock unwinding. As the minutes ticked by, a plan, not petty, but precise, began to assemble in my mind like blueprints. Division, exposure. Legal routes, social circles that judged more harshly than any court. Divorce maybe, public shame maybe, the end of comfort. But I also thought of leverage, confessions that could be used to secure what I needed, custody for the future, financial safety, the power to choose my life again without them. I was not cruel, I was deliberate. When the neighbor's husband finally rose, he did so as if a decision had been made. He was quieter now, focused. You have the proof? I handed him one of the small USB sticks I'd keep for months, backups of images, messages I had, nothing dramatized, just the truth. He took it like a relic, like something that could restore order simply by existing. "I'm going to speak to a lawyer," he said finally. "Tomorrow, we'll do what needs to be done." "And if he refuses to sign anything?" the neighbor pleaded, desperate to avoid the fallout. "You will tell the truth," her husband said flat. "Or you accept whatever the consequences are." She trembled, and the tremor in her shoulders betrayed more fear than shame. She loved him, or at least she loved not losing what she had. I felt no relief for her. Betrayal is a complicated cruelty. Before he left, he turned to me. Why didn't you call the police?" he asked, as if the question might redeem something. "Because," I said simply, "some things are not fixed with sirens and paperwork. Some things require a clean slate. And right now I need options. I need to decide how far this goes." He looked at me then, properly, as if seeing me for the first time. There was respect there, not warm but wary. "You're not the same woman you were when we moved into these houses," he said. "You've changed." I could have told him that I had always been this woman, that the facade had simply been comfortable for the rest of them. But I didn't. I smiled instead, a small, controlled movement. "Some changes are overdue," I said. They left. The neighbor with her face hidden, the neighbor's husband with his jaw set like stone, my husband trailing behind them like a shadow. The house settled into a strange silence, the kind that comes after an orchestra has played its final unresolved chord. I walked back into the storage room and closed the door. The lock clicked like a punctuation mark. Alone, I let myself breathe, and my breath came ragged and hot. The tape recorder sat on the shelf, small and ordinary and capable of ruining lives. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. There would be more to do. There would be lawyers, truths, testimonies. There would be a slow demolition of trust and lies and comfort, brick by calculated brick. But first, a plan. First, patience. The best revenge I knew now was not a single act of violence or fury. It was a life rebuilt in the light, on new terms, while they watched from the ruins of their deceit. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because the horizon now had a shape. It had direction, it had a purpose, and I had the proof. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. The silence carried weight, the kind that presses on your chest and refuses to let go. I moved through each room with measured steps, the echo of my own breathing, the only sound that reminded me I was still alive, still in control. I had crossed the threshold from victim to strategist. Every move now had to be deliberate. Every word, every glance, every decision, a calculated step in a larger game that only I fully understood. Revenge was no longer an abstract concept. It was a blueprint etched into my mind, waiting for the right moment to be executed with precision. First, I needed intelligence. I couldn't act recklessly. My husband had always underestimated me, thought my strength lay only in domestic comfort, in quiet submission. That misjudgment would be his undoing. I opened my laptop, pulling up old messages, deleted files, financial records, and phone logs. Every interaction between him and the neighbor that I could recover was precious ammunition. As I sifted through the digital remnants of betrayal, I felt a surge of anger, hot and consuming. How easily he had slipped into deception, how smoothly he had hidden his duplicity under smiles, mundane routines, and whispered lies. But anger alone wasn't enough. I needed control, leverage, the ability to dictate how the story unfolded. The neighbor's husband had left with the evidence. That was a start, but it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed him to understand that betrayal could never be hidden, that deceit had consequences beyond immediate exposure. And I needed my husband to fear not just my wrath, but the impossibility of reclaiming trust, the slow, suffocating weight of shame. I started with social observation. The neighbor had friends, work contacts, casual acquaintances who knew her as a model citizen, a polite wife, a reliable neighbor. Each photo, each social post, each digital trace could become a thread in the web I was beginning to weave. I didn't need to destroy her entirely, just enough to fracture the illusion she had built, to let the truth seep into the cracks like water into stone. Then came the planning. Every step I took in my home, in my mind, became a rehearsal for the confrontation that would come. I pictured meetings, conversations, subtle manipulations that would force confessions, revelations that would topple their carefully curated lives. I imagined my husband's face when he realized that every small deception had been observed, logged, and catalogued. By the evening, I had a framework. First, the neighbor's husband would be approached quietly, carefully guided toward a resolution that would force accountability. Then, my husband. He had to understand the magnitude of his betrayal, not as a passing moment of weakness, but as an irreversible fracture in our lives. The truth had to hit like lightning, sudden, blinding, unavoidable. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. Shadows were fitting. They mirrored the darkness that had existed behind doors, the lies that had thrived in hidden corners. And yet, shadows could also reveal shapes, outlines, the form of what was coming. The phone rang. I knew who it was before I answered. It was her, the neighbor, her voice tremulous, unsure, as if she were testing the waters of reality against her panic. You can't do this," she said, barely more than a whisper. "I already am," I replied. Calm, steady, controlled. "This isn't a threat. It's a statement of fact. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." She paused, swallowed. "Please, I'll do anything." "Anything!" The desperation in her voice was intoxicating. I allowed myself a small, cold smile. "Anything?" "Yes, anything," she repeated. "I'll tell the truth. Good," I interrupted. "We'll start there, but know this. The truth alone isn't enough. Accountability, consequences, that's what matters. I'll guide you through the process, step by step. Every lie you've ever told, every word you've whispered behind closed doors, it will be revealed." She was silent after that. Fear had replaced her defiance. Panic had replaced her bravado. For the first time, she understood that control had shifted. Not to her husband, not to my husband, but to me. I hung up and allowed myself a slow breath. The first domino had fallen. Now it was time for the next. I called my lawyer, a meticulous, sharp-minded woman I had known for years. I didn't explain the betrayal in detail. That was for later. Instead, I outlined a scenario that would ensure maximum leverage for me. Evidence preservation, controlled disclosures, a network of witnesses if needed. Legal measures weren't just tools, they were instruments of precision. I wanted everything documented, undeniable, untouchable. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, the house dark except for the pale glow of the refrigerator light. Memories of happier times flashed across my mind, laughter, shared dinners, promises whispered in the quiet of the night. And beneath them, the pain of betrayal burned sharper than I expected. But grief was secondary now. Revenge demanded clarity, a level mind, and an iron resolve. The next day I started subtly. Conversations with neighbors, seemingly casual, planted seeds of doubt. Observations about honesty, loyalty, trust, all framed in a way that seemed innocent, conversational, yet carefully calculated to destabilize the narrative my husband and neighbor had relied upon. Each word, each glance, a thread tugging at the fabric of their constructed lives. By afternoon, I had heard whispers, small, unverified, but enough to know the ripple effect had begun. People who once greeted the neighbor with warm smiles now looked past her, their expressions tinged with suspicion. The social mirror had started to fracture. Then came my husband. I watched him that evening, moving through the house with the tentative caution of a man unsure of his standing. He tried conversation, forced small talk, as if normalcy could patch the breach in reality I had revealed to him. I let him speak. I let him feel safe, even for a moment. And then I struck. "Do you remember what I found?" I asked quietly. No anger, no theatrics, just the cold, undeniable truth. He froze. His eyes widened, and I saw panic flicker, quickly suppressed by a veneer of rationalization. He began. "No," I interrupted. "Not excuses, details. Every night, every message, every lie. Start talking." The first word was slow, hesitant. Then more followed. A torrent of admissions, confessions, admissions that cut deeper than any anger I could have expressed. I listened, not interrupting, cataloging everything mentally, every tremor, every guilty glance, every hesitation. This was not punishment, it was evidence. And in evidence there is power. By the time he stopped speaking, hours had passed. The shadows of the room were long, stretching across walls like silent witnesses. I finally spoke. You have no idea what comes next, I said. Not just for you, but for everyone involved. You've given me clarity, direction, and the ammunition I need. And soon, everything you thought was safe will no longer be. He slumped against the counter, hollowed out, exhausted. For the first time, he understood the extent of my resolve. And I smiled inwardly, knowing that the game had moved into the arena where I played best, calculated, patient, unrelenting. The next phase would require finesse, manipulation, and timing, public exposure, strategic revelations, consequences that were unavoidable, yet executed with surgical precision. I looked out the window at the street, the ordinary lives of neighbors unaware of the storm brewing in our house. The calm before the storm had ended. The storm itself was here, and I was the eye, centered, silent, lethal in its stillness. The first moves were made. Shadows were shifting, lies were unraveling, and by the time the sun rose again, nothing would be the same. The morning air carried a deceptive calm, a quiet that belied the storm I had set in motion. The sun rose, casting golden light over the neighborhood, but inside my house, the world had already shifted. Every corner, every shadow seemed charged with anticipation. Today would be the day when everything hidden would begin to unravel. I began with subtlety. The neighbor's husband had agreed, reluctantly, to cooperate. He had delivered the evidence to his lawyer, and we had ensured it was airtight. Every message, every image, every recorded conversation was backed up, time-stamped, undeniable. There would be no question of doubt, no room for excuses, no slippery escape. I knew the power of perception. People feared scandal, but even more, they feared exposure to the truth they had ignored or chosen to overlook. I would use that fear as a weapon. The first move was at the neighborhood gathering, a seemingly casual tea with a few of the regulars. I arrived late, dressed simply but deliberately, my demeanor calm, controlled, radiating an aura of authority. As I entered, I noticed the subtle shifts in the room. Averted eyes, hushed whispers, the quick exchange of glances. My presence had already begun to disrupt the fragile equilibrium. I smiled faintly, acknowledging everyone with polite nods. Each gesture was measured, every word deliberate. Then I began weaving the story, carefully, slowly. Not outright accusations, that would be crude and obvious. Instead, I asked questions, innocuous at first. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to hide small things? Little details people think no one will notice? The words seemed casual, but they landed like pebbles in still water. Ripples spread, eyes followed me. Conversations paused. People leaned in, subconsciously picking up on the tension, the subtle edge beneath the calm exterior. By mid-morning, whispers had begun. Questions were murmured about loyalty, honesty, the trustworthiness of neighbors, of friends, of spouses. I stayed composed, observing, listening, subtly guiding the narrative without saying a single direct word. My husband's indiscretions became an unspoken undercurrent, a shadow hovering over every polite exchange. Then came the confrontation. I had arranged for the neighbor's husband to attend, under the guise of casual civility, but I knew the truth would emerge. When he arrived, his face was tight, controlled, but the tension was unmistakable. I introduced them briefly, with a calm formality that belied the chaos beneath. A conversation sparked, seemingly benign, about community events, shared responsibilities, neighborhood gatherings. And then, carefully, deliberately, I let a detail slip, a small fact, casual in tone but deadly in implication. I always wondered, I said, smiling faintly, how much of what happens behind closed doors people truly understand. Sometimes a simple glance, a whispered word, can reveal everything. The neighbor's husband stiffened. He glanced at his wife, whose forced composure cracked instantly. Her eyes darted to me, panic replacing the confident mask she had worn for so long. Around us, the subtle shift was palpable. Whispers grew louder, eyes widened. The atmosphere thickened with suspicion and silent judgment. By noon, the first social fractures appeared. Friends who had once exchanged pleasantries with the neighbor now avoided her gaze, their smiles strained. Rumors, carefully seeded by my indirect words and the natural curiosity of human nature, began to circulate. People speculated, connected dots, and pieced together fragments of the story I had orchestrated. Meanwhile, my husband watched from the sidelines, silent, powerless. The realization had set in. His life, meticulously hidden from scrutiny, was unraveling. Every lie, every betrayal was now visible in the harsh light of social perception. And he knew it. That evening I confronted him directly. We were alone, the house silent except for the ticking of the clock, a sound that felt like a countdown. "Do you understand what's happening?" I asked softly, almost gently. He swallowed, words failing him. His pride, his arrogance, crumbled under the weight of exposure. He nodded once, a small defeated motion. "This isn't just about your affair," I continued. "It's about the life you thought you could manipulate, the trust you thought you could exploit. Every person you deceived, every lie you told, it's all coming to light. And it will continue until the truth is complete." He looked at me then, a mixture of fear, guilt, and awe. He had underestimated me, as he always did. But now he understood. I wasn't reacting out of anger. I wasn't seeking petty revenge. I was executing a plan, one that ensured accountability, one that ensured he would never forget the cost of betrayal. The neighbor, meanwhile, attempted to salvage herself. She tried explanations, excuses, tearful apologies. But I had anticipated this. I listened, cold and unyielding, recording everything, cataloging every word. Every plea, every denial, every justification became part of the record. Evidence not just of their guilt, but of their desperation, their weakness. Over the next few days, the fallout intensified. Friends and colleagues who had remained neutral began to distance themselves. Invitations ceased. Subtle slights appeared in social settings. The network of trust they had relied upon disintegrated, brick by brick. Each act of social isolation, each whispered doubt was a victory. Quiet, devastating, and irreversible. I maintained my composure throughout, appearing unaffected, almost serene. This was deliberate. People fear calm more than rage. Calm suggests control, calculation, inevitability, and I was calm. One evening, my husband attempted confrontation. "This is too much," he said, voice trembling. "You're destroying everything." I leaned back, watching him closely. "No," I said, "I'm restoring balance. I'm ensuring that lies have consequences. You chose deceit. You chose betrayal. Now you face the result." His face twisted in frustration, but the truth was undeniable. The power had shifted. The scales had tipped irreversibly. By the end of the week, the exposure was complete. The neighbor's husband had taken legal steps. Social and professional repercussions were unavoidable. My husband had no choice but to comply, to admit, to accept the dismantling of the comfortable illusion he had built. And through it all, I remained the calm center, the orchestrator of justice. Not violent, not rash, but deliberate. Each move, each revelation had been executed with precision. They were dismantled not by brute force, but by strategy, by observation, by patience. Sitting alone that night, I reflected on the process. Revenge had never been about instant gratification. It had been about patience, about meticulous planning, about understanding the psychology of betrayal and the consequences of exposure. I had anticipated every reaction, every attempt at evasion, every desperate plea. And now, as the pieces settled, the aftermath was undeniable. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a deep breath. The storm had passed, or at least the first wave. The exposure was complete, the initial chaos settled. And yet beneath the calm, I knew the final act was still to come. Justice was not merely about revelation, it was about ensuring that the consequences were permanent, that trust could never again be shattered without accountability, that the lesson was etched deeply enough that it would never be forgotten. I closed the window, shutting out the world. The final confrontation awaited, and I was ready. The night was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and fills every corner of the room. But I felt no fear. Fear belonged to those who had hidden in lies, who had believed that their betrayals could remain unchallenged. I belonged to a different realm now, one of control, clarity, and cold calculation. Tonight would be the night that all debts were settled. I had planned everything meticulously. Every move, every step, every word had been calculated. The social exposure had done its work. The neighbor's husband had filed legal papers, securing accountability. Friends and colleagues had begun to withdraw support. My husband was isolated, vulnerable, aware that his comfortable life had crumbled. And yet, isolation alone was not enough. The final reckoning required confrontation. Undeniable, irreversible confrontation. I called my husband into the living room. His hesitation was palpable. He walked slowly, as though each step reminded him of the betrayal he had committed, the consequences he now faced. The tension in the room was almost tangible, thick enough to choke, heavy with anticipation. I didn't speak immediately. I let him feel the weight of the silence, the anticipation, the unspoken understanding that he was entirely at my mercy. "Do you understand what this is?" I finally asked, my voice calm, almost gentle, but carrying an edge that cut deeper than any yell could. He swallowed, eyes darting away. I understand." "No," I said sharply. "You don't. You understand the consequences of your choices. You understand that every secret you buried, every trust you broke, every betrayal you committed has a cost. And tonight you will see that cost in full." I gestured toward the documents and recordings I had compiled. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Texts, videos, audio recordings, logs of meetings and encounters, every detail cataloged with precision. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for them, the realization finally dawning that there would be no escape. "You've made your choices," I continued. "And now you must face them. Not just with me, not just with the law, but with the undeniable truth of your actions laid bare for all to see." His face twisted in frustration and fear. This isn't fair," he protested weakly. Fairness was irrelevant. Justice, accountability, and control were the currency of this moment. "Fairness?" I echoed. "You had no fairness when you betrayed me. You had no fairness when you deceived your family, your friends, and yourself. This is not about fairness. This is about balance, about consequences. This is about truth." I watched him, his posture crumbling, his bravado gone. He understood now that there would be no casual apology, no forgotten incident, no quick reconciliation. Everything he had done was exposed, documented, and undeniable. Then came the neighbor. She arrived quietly, her face pale, her eyes avoiding mine, the panic of exposure evident in her every movement. She had been warned, prepared, but nothing can fully prepare a person for the inevitability of truth. "You're here," I said simply. My calmness was unnerving. "Good. You need to see this, all of this. The choices you made, the lies you told, and the path you forced us all to walk." She swallowed hard, nodding, trembling. I understand," she whispered, though the words lacked conviction. "I hope you do," I replied. "Because the reckoning is not over until you truly grasp the depth of what you've done. And tonight, it will be undeniable." I activated the presentation I had meticulously prepared. Slides, recordings, logs, and a timeline of events. The room filled with the sound of voices, captured in real time, unaltered, undeniable. Each confession, each admission, each whisper of betrayal played like a symphony of guilt. The weight of truth was inescapable, pressing down on both of them, bending them under its force. The neighbor's husband entered the room next, his expression stoic, but his eyes betraying the tension. He had been briefed, prepared, and yet even he could feel the gravity of the moment. The recordings, the logs, the detailed evidence, all undeniable, all orchestrated. I watched as the truth unfolded, as the web of lies collapsed before them. My husband's face paled, his hands shaking. The neighbor's eyes welled with tears, fear and remorse battling for dominance. And in that silence, in that room filled with undeniable truth, I felt the full measure of my own power. "You've lost more than you realize," I said softly, deliberately, each word weighted with meaning. "Not just trust, not just respect, not just friendship. You've lost control, and control is everything. You've surrendered it to me, and I will decide its fate." Legal consequences followed. Divorce papers were signed. Custody arrangements were formalized. Financial settlements were executed. Social consequences were enforced. Each step, each action, orchestrated with precision, left them no room to maneuver. Their lives, once comfortable and controlled, were now dismantled, rebuilt in a new structure dictated by truth and accountability. The psychological weight was perhaps the most satisfying aspect. My husband, once confident, now floundering. The neighbor, once manipulative, now humbled. The ripple effects extended beyond our immediate circle. Friends and colleagues recalibrated their perceptions. Alliances shifted. Reputations were rebuilt on new truths. The exposure was comprehensive, relentless, inescapable. Through it all, I remained the calm, calculating force. I did not gloat. I did not show anger. My satisfaction was subtle, almost imperceptible. This was not about spectacle. It was about power, balance, and justice. Finally, as the dust settled, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. I walked through the house, now quiet, the oppressive tension replaced with a serene clarity. Every room, every corner, every shadow reminded me of what had been lost and what had been regained. I had been wronged, betrayed, and deceived, but I had transformed that pain into action, into strategy, into control, and now the scales were balanced. The consequences had been delivered. Justice had been served. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman who stared back was not the naive, trusting wife of months ago. She was stronger, sharper, unyielding. She was the orchestrator of truth, the master of consequences, the keeper of power. And in that reflection, I saw not vengeance alone, but resolution, the clarity that comes from knowing that justice, once meticulously planned, had been executed flawlessly. As the night deepened, I felt an unexpected peace. The reckoning was complete. The lies had been confronted. The betrayals had been addressed. And I had emerged not broken, but unshakable, a force of calculated, inevitable justice. For them, life would never be the same. For me, life had begun anew. The storm had passed, leaving clarity, strength, and the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed with precision. And as I finally turned off the lights, closing the door on the night's events, I knew this truth above all. Some storms pass, but the ones you create with care and resolve leave marks that last forever. The power of truth, justice, and calculated action was mine, and no one could ever take it away.